As the Spokane community continued its search for Candy into the night, the once united efforts gave way to a growing sense of unease. It was highly unusual for Candy not to return home promptly, raising concerns among her family, friends and neighbors. The vivid streets of Spokane, where children usually played freely, echoed with worried whispers about Candy's whereabouts. Candy's parents, Kyle and Elaine Rogers, were gripped with anxiety, desperately waiting for any news about their beloved daughter. Their initial optimism of finding her safe and sound slowly waned as the night wore on. Local authorities were alerted, and soon the search expanded beyond the neighborhood, encompassing parks, streets and nearby areas. In the days following Candy's disappearance, the Spokane community remained on edge, haunted by the mystery of what could have befallen the cheerful and outgoing 9-year-old. The police conducted interviews, gathered information and pursued leads, but the case proved elusive. Today's weeks turned into months and months into years. Candy's disappearance became one of the city's enduring mysteries. The passage of time did not diminish the impact of Candy's absence on the Rogers family and the Spokane community. The once vibrant neighborhood took on a somber tone, and the innocence of letting children roam freely after school was replaced by a collective sense of caution and concern. Decades passed, and the mystery of Candy's disappearance persisted as a cold case filed away in the annals of unsolved mysteries. However, in 2021, the case took an unexpected turn. Advancements in forensic technology and a renewed effort by the Cold Case Unit brought new hope to solving the mystery that had haunted Spokane for over 6 decades. Join in the next chapter of Limited Crime as we unravel the twists and turns that led to the resolution of one of the oldest told cases in Spokane's history, bringing closure to family and a community that had long sought answers. At the tender age of 9, Candy was entrusted with the task of selling CampFire Mints to fund her trips. Her parents, deeming their neighborhood safe, allowed her to venture door-to-door solo, a routine she carried out regularly. Artrix 1959 seemed like any other unremarkable Friday in Spokane. Candice attended school, returned home, and set out to sell mints in her familiar surroundings. As the day unfolded, her parents' initial confidence waned into a worry when Candy failed to return home. Concern turned to panic as evening descended, prompting them to report her missing to the police. The entire community rallied, initiating a search for Candy, who had become a notable absence. In the absence of modern technology, with no GPS or cell phones, a search was challenging. Clothes were scarce except for boxes of the CampFire Mints Candy was peddling, discovered on Pettit Drive, leading away from their west central neighborhood. Over 1,200 volunteers from Spokane and its surroundings joined the search in the days that followed, scouring the city and its environs. As the US Air Force even contributed, dispatching a helicopter crew to survey the remote areas from above. Tragically, a day after Candy's disappearance, the helicopter collided with high-tension power lines above the Spokane Eva, resulting in a crash. Airman Marlis D.A., Sergeant William McDonnell and Lieutenant Kenneth J. Tragically lost their lives, while 2 crew members survived with injuries. Despite continued efforts over the subsequent weeks, the search for Candy proved futile. Volunteer numbers dwindled as hope waned, leaving a community grappling with the mystery of the young girl who had vanished without a trace. On March 21, 1959, 2 airmen from Fairchild were hunting in the woods near the Old Trails Road, approximately 7 miles from Candy's residence. During their excursion, they stumbled upon a pair of girls' shoes in the forest. Aware of Candy's disappearance, they speculated whether the shoes belonged to her. As reporting their discovery to the authorities, a search party was promptly organized. The following day, the search party descended upon the area where the shoes were found. Tragically, Candy's lifeless body was uncovered, concealed beneath a shallow layer of brush and pine needles. Despite the desperate hope that she might still be alive, her parents were devastated to learn that she was gone forever. In 1959, forensic science lacked the advanced techniques of today, and DNA analysis was non-existent. Examination of Candice's body revealed she had been deceased for about 2 weeks, having suffered a cruel death by strangulation with a piece of her own clothing. Additionally, signs of sexual assault before her demise were evident. Due to these findings, law enforcement diligently preserved any potential evidence at the crime scene, storing samples of Candice's clothing believed to contain the assailant's DNA. Despite the absence of DNA testing at the time, authorities harbored the hope that preserving the evidence would eventually aid in solving the case. Apart from these details, the police had limited leads to pursue in their investigation. They issued a public appeal urging anyone with information about the murderer to come forward. This marked the commencement of an exhaustive and protracted inquiry spanning over 60 years. In 1959, there was no established sex offender program prompting the police to investigate individuals in the vicinity with similar criminal backgrounds. They diligently followed up on thousands of tips provided by the public, although only a handful proved valuable. Tight initial focus on several suspects, one notable individual under serious scrutiny was Hugh Beyond Morse. Of course, a serial killer responsible for the deaths of 2 Spokane women and a near-fatal attack on a third during a nationwide spree in the late 1950s and 1960s was extensively questioned. It was as the discovery of a piece of grape chewing gum, a flavour associated with Morse, in Candice's body heightened suspicions. However, Morse was eventually cleared through DNA evidence in 2001. Another person of interest at the time was Alfred Graves, a 50-year-old resident of 815 North Cannon Street. On that, he took his own life by inhaling carbon monoxide inside his car on the same day Candice Rogers' body was discovered. Graves left a suicide note in the vehicle parked on Downriver Drive, but the contents of the note were not documented at the time. He had been facing allegations of inappropriate contact with several women, and during the investigation, police discovered newspaper clippings about assaulted women and children in the room where Graves had been residing. Additionally, bobby pins and sections of rope were found in the trunk of his car. Investigators were particularly intrigued by the rope because marks on Candice's body suggested the use of a rope around her waist, although no such rope was found with her body. Like Graves ending his own life, the police could not find concrete evidence linking him to Candice's case, leaving uncertainty about his involvement. Another individual, James Howard Barnett, 8049 and residing at 2125 West Centre Avenue, was also a suspect due to his history of exploiting minors. He had been taken into police custody in 1960 for alleged sex crimes against a child and hanged himself in his cell at the Spokane County Jail on February 7, 1960, just 4 days after his arrest on suspicion of molesting a child. In a grim detail released to the public, it was revealed that Barnett had written a message on his cell wall in his own blood, stating, "I have sinned against the Lord." Despite relentless efforts by both the Spokane Police Department and external investigators, there was never enough evidence to directly link Barnett to Candice's murder. So at the time, the case went cold due to a lack of concrete leads, but the investigators, refusing to abandon Candice, passed the torch to successive generations. As the original detectives retired, younger investigators took on the challenge, urged by their predecessors to uncover any overlooked details. This practice became a tradition, keeping Candice's case alive within the Spokane police force. For decades, they diligently worked the case, hoping for a breakthrough. So in early 2021, Sergeant Jack Storm, retired speed detective Brian Hammond, were the latest in this line of investigators. A breakthrough finally occurred when a forensic scientist suggested sending the evidence, including a preserved semen sample from Candice's clothing, to a private genome sequencing company in Texas. Remarkably, the specimen remained intact after over 60 years, stored in an airtight mason jar, unlike much of the other evidence from the original crime scene. The genealogy database narrowed potential matches down to 3 brothers, John Ray Hoff, Andrew Hoff, and Terry Allen Hoff. Of the three, only John Ray had children. Detectives reached out to John Ray's daughter, Kathy Hoff, who willingly provided a DNA sample. In September 2021, the results confirmed the match between John Ray Hoff's DNA and the evidence from the crime scene. The police had finally identified the perpetrator, but justice could not be served, as they discovered that John Hoff had taken his own life in 1970. John Hoff had joined the army at 17 and at the time of the murder lived just a mile away from Candy. In 1959, at the age of 20, he committed the heinous act of assaulting and murdering Candy. He first became acquainted with Candy through his 10-year-old sister, who was part of the same CampFire Girls troop at the time. However, 1961 marked not only the beginning of their connection, but also the commencement of a series of horrendous acts. 2 years following Candy's tragic murder, Hoff faced legal consequences for assaulting Rob with the intent to kill. During this incident, Euphrasia disrobed a woman, used her own clothes to bind her, strangled her, and then fled the scene. Despite surviving the attack, the victim's ordeal led to Hoff serving 6 months in jail based on his conviction. Subsequently, the army declared him a deserter and discharged him. Hoff found employment as a door-to-door salesman and worked at a lumber yard until his expulsion from the military in 1970. At the age of 31, Hoff took his own life, presumably to ensure that he wouldn't face justice. The police determined to bring closure to Candy's case after 6 decades of investigation, obtained a warrant to exhume Hoff's body and collect donor samples for testing against existing evidence. The results confirmed a perfect match, leaving no doubt that after 60 years they had finally identified the man responsible for ending Candy's life. Unfortunately, the passage of time meant that almost all of Candy's relatives had passed away without discovering the identity of her murderer, leaving her parents to die with the lingering question of who had taken their beloved daughter from them. Candy's cousin Joanne, who passed away herself in her 70s, was available for comment when the news was released. It's not closure, but at least there's some form of satisfaction in knowing that the person who did it is at least named. Poe said he may be in a grave, but he's named while Poss herself was relieved to finally have answers. He knows that something Candy's parents never got. They never saw him pay or die for it, or whatever she said, they went to their grave not knowing, and that was very hard. Spokane detectives were overjoyed at the end of a case that they'd been working on for over 60 years. Major crimes detective Zach Stormont said the closing of the case had been a long time coming. It's the Mount Everest of our cold cases, the one we could never seem to overcome, but at the same time nobody ever forgot. He said that finally, after 6 decades, the case was solved, and we hope that wherever she is, Candy is resting peacefully. And there it is, folks, the tale of how a 60-year-old cold case was finally solved. Are you impressed by the dedication shown by the generations of detectives who never let the memory of Candy fade away? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed the video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, stay safe and thanks for watching.